Hey everyone, it's Nikki with Chasing Light. We are going to turn this image into something pretty amazing, as you can see from the before picture on the page. So we'll get started right away. Try and get this done as quick as possible so that YouTube doesn't have any issues with the time constraints. So this is the image that I have chosen, and the reason is because there's a lot of hair flowing, and I wanted to show you that you can do this and still keep the hair relatively crisp. There's several steps to this, so we'll motor through this. So I have retouched my little girl first using my retouch action set. You can see that I've applied, a little bit of color to her cheeks, and as well retouched her skin a little bit. She had several bruises and stuff that little kids usually do, but that's pretty much about it. I've desaturated it to a certain degree as well, because I like to incorporate other saturation processes along the way. So the first thing that we're going to do is go over to our layers palette, and we're going to duplicate our layer. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to grab my lasso tool, my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to select this side of the image, Command C for copy, Command V for paste, Command T for transform, and I'm going to flip that horizontal. Hit return, and I'm going to pull it over to the other side, just like this. Okay, and why we're doing this is because balanced images are much more pleasing to the eye. So now what we're going to do is we're going to just hit Option Mask, and we're going to mask that layer in using a soft white brush. Opacity, we're going to start at 100 because we're going to bring this in over here on this side. Sorry people, sometimes my Photoshop will do this and I don't know why. Okay, so we're just going to mask that in till we get to about here. And I'm going to drop the opacity down now and just slowly work it. So you can see where the edge is right here. Just gives me something to work with. I could have inverted this layer as well, but there's really no wrong or right way to do this. So now I'm just going to get rid of this dividing line. And keep in mind, I'm trying to do this fast so that YouTube upload, download thing doesn't create such an issue for us. We want to make sure that seam is not visible, because if you're blowing up images for your clients, the last thing you want to do if you zoom in really close is you don't want to see any seams, right? So you can see it right here. You want to make sure that seam is gone. That's the most important part. Okay. Now just drop your opacity a bit more. And you want to really blend those two so that it doesn't look entirely like it was brought in. Also, what you can do if you're struggling with the blending portion of this is you can hit Command T again, and you can drag it over a bit like this, and that'll give you just a little bit more to play with as far as getting rid of that. So this will give us a little bit more room, and we'll make sure it's off of her, because the last thing we want is on the hair or the skin. So this, you can see it just gives us a wee bit more to play with. I want to keep this over here as white as possible because I want it to sort of match that right there. So we go back, once again, get that line out. So if you're finding that you're struggling with that, like right here, because it is such a drastic transition, don't worry too much about it, because you can always go back and you can either use your healing brush or you can clone it out. So don't worry too much about it. Okay, that's gonna have to do. So let's go into our properties and feather that just a tiny bit. Okay, so that's what we've done now. I'm just gonna really quickly go ahead and flatten my layer. Obviously, when I'm building these for tutorials, the initial image that I'm working on, I don't. But because of this one, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm just going to go over here now and I'm just going to clean this up. So I usually have my flow at about 3%. I'm just going to clean this up a bit because I want it to be more like that. And what you could do is you could clone over here and you could just up your flow a bit. And that way it's going to look more like it does there. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is really not going to be all that visible when we're finished with it anyway, right? So we'll drop that down a bit. Just add in a little bit more of that. Okay, that is good enough. Okay, we're going to go ahead and flatten that again. So our next step, we're going to go ahead and duplicate this layer again. Now we're going to go filter, blur, field blur. If you are in lower versions of Photoshop from Photoshop CS6, don't worry, just use Gaussian. I mean, field blur is a nice blur, but don't worry about it too much. So I'm going to do this at about 70 pixels. Hit OK. Be careful when you're using this particular tool. You don't want it to look fake. I find that a lot of people are doing this too much now and it's starting to look a little comical. So you want to be really subtle with your blur. Just, you know, like this, obviously I shot this with the 70 to 200. There's a beautiful bokeh in the background. I just want to soften it a little bit. I don't want to go super extreme. So I'm going to grab my white brush. I'm going to be at about 50%. And I'm just going to paint on the effect in the areas that I really wanted. I'm not going to do the entire image because that would look completely fake, because we all know that our lenses don't have an even blur on the entire image. So mostly on the top, because that's the way that I like it. So I'll do some on the top and I'll just do a smidge on the bottom here. Not too much and not too far up, but just a tiny little bit, like a vignette almost, just right there. A little bit right here where this transition is a little crisp. See that? Those shadows are really sharp. So we're just going to do that. Maybe a little bit in the woods. And that's plenty for me. And I'm just going to go into properties again and just blend that out. Okay? And so I'm looking down here and I still think that's a bit strong. So I'm going to drop my opacity and I'm going to just, again, paint that effect off just a wee bit because to me it looks fake. I don't like fake. Okay. See, that's a little bit better. See how much more realistic that looks? Okay, good. So we're going to go ahead and flatten that image. And the next thing that I'm going to do, believe it or not, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply my Hansel and Gretel, because it really changes the look of this image. So hit Hansel and Gretel, click play. And now, as you can see, open up your whole group and turn off all of the actions from the top to the bottom. All of the layers, sorry. And the reason for that is because you can move in and you can really adjust each layer individually easier this way. I like the vignette where it is, so I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to hit, I think, yeah, I don't want, let me look here. I don't want deepen. I do want warmth, but I'm actually going to adjust this one to about 33%. I like that better. Light and center. Yep, I do want the light and center, but I'm going to adjust that down to 31%, just subtly. I don't want darken this time. Keep in mind that Hansel and Gretel is a great action that will allow you to turn a day to night. So we're just taking a few items from this and we're adjusting it. So we're going to do 56% on this gradient. Right about there. Okay. So we're going to close the Hansel and Gretel group and we're going to adjust the whole opacity of it to 80. Okay. So now there's the difference before and after, right? So that's pretty good. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and flatten that. And the next step is we are going to apply the leaves. So what you need to do is you need to create your own PNG leaf file. I will be offering these as a download after I create some new ones for you. So find a PNG file of leaves somewhere. Excuse me again. And what you're going to do is just drag that layer on, click OK. You can even cut them out from existing images of trees and stuff that you have and just create a PNG file. I'm going to hit Command T and I'm going to enlarge this. I'm going to make it about this big. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate this layer 4 times. I'm going to turn off the top 3 and I'm just going to work on the first one. Now this one here, I'm going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. I'm going to do, I believe it's about 15–16%. Click OK. You just want to hit your erase tool and make sure that nothing's on her face. Maybe off her hair too. Okay, that's fine. And we're going to go and we're going to grab this next layer. And what we're going to do with this, we're going to go Command T. We're going to make it smaller. We're going to right click on the image and we're going to flip it horizontal because we want the leaves to look different on every layer. We don't want them to all look the same. Hit enter and you're going to move it up here in this quadrant. Okay, and you're going to hit blur again. Go to blur. This one's going to be a little less, so we're going to go about 10. Hit OK. Grab your eraser, and once again you're going to erase those leaves off of her face area. This one's pretty big, so we'll take that one away too. We just don't want any distractions away from her so much. You don't want this to distract from her because she's our primary subject. Okay, so now we're going to go to the third layer. Once again, we're going to go Command T. We're going to reduce the size of that. We're going to flip this vertically this time. Hit enter. We're going to grab it and move it over here. We're going to do the same blur that we did on the last one. So in order to do that, you can just hit either Command F or just hit your old one, the last one that you did, which is at the very top. It remembers the last settings you used for the last filter. So we'll just hit that. There we go. Perfect. And what we're going to do here, and yes, you could have duplicated the other layer. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat for sure. So this last layer here, what I want to do with this one is I want to make it, Command T, make it quite a bit smaller. Okay, quite a bit smaller, like, we're going to put it right about there. Hit enter. And we're going to leave it as it is, and we're going to hit blur, and it's going to be about half of that, so around 6. Okay, so that's our leaves. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we erase whatever's around or on her face or too distracting for her. I find this one a little distracting, so I'm going to take it off. This one, where is that one? Is it on this one? Yep. Okay, take that one off. These are pretty distracting too. Okay, good enough. Now what we're going to do is we're going to right click, highlight all of your layers. You're going to right click and you're going to choose merge layers. Okay, and now what you're going to do is you're going to duplicate that layer. Click OK, duplicate it one more time, click OK, turn off the top 2. I guess you don't have to. Go back to your initial layer. You're going to reduce the opacity down to about 35. The next one, you're going to reduce it down to about 55. And this one, you're going to reduce it down to around 70 or so. So that it's just play with it how it looks. Like I said that initially, but I'm actually going to go lower because I don't want them to stand out too terribly much. So yeah, just reduce them until they're not super distracting in your image. Everybody's got their own personal preferences. I like this. I think this works. I like this because it really matches all of the colors in the image, right? Okay, go ahead and flatten that image now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to brighten up the corners of this. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to go over here to my colors. I'm going to make sure I have the color that I want my gradient to be in there, which is F8, F2, F0. Again, personal preference. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to grab a gradient. This one is going to be scale of 100. I'm going to do about 80% opacity on this one. And now I'm going to drag it over here. Because this area to me is smaller and this area is larger. So I'm going to just duplicate that layer, open it up, and I want this one to be 145 for scale. And I want this one's 80 as well. So just have to drag it over here, just like that. Okay. I'm going to go back to the first layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go about 50%, and I have a soft brush, it's up to you what you want to use. I'm just going to paint her back. I'm not really going to go into the hair that's flying out into the image at all. Just want to make sure that I get her back. Go to the next one and do exactly the same thing. What's nice about this is the detail of her hair is still pretty good, but I'm going to show you in a minute how to make her pop back just a little bit more. I'm going to go up here, I'm just going to feather both of those masks a wee bit so that there's no harsh lines. Okay, all right. We're going to go ahead and flatten that one. Now I'm going to duplicate my layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to image, apply image, make sure that it's choosing the other layer and that the blending mode is soft light. Click OK. I'm going to reduce this down to about 55, like that. And I'm going to hit Option Mask and grab a white brush at about 50%, and then I'm going to paint back. And what this does is it just makes her pop out a little bit more, because once you apply all of these blurs and all this other stuff, your subject can kind of get faded out and be a little soft, and we just want to bring her back. So just avoid the hair here. Use your soft brush so that your edges aren't hard. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my opacity just a bit, and I'm going to bring back the foreground a wee bit, just for a little bit of depth here. Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to feather this again. That looks awesome. Flatten my layer. And then the last and final step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my romance set here, and I'm going to hit Embrace, because Embrace is beautiful for bringing back reds. See that? But what I'm going to do with Embrace is I'm going to knock it right down to about 25%. And I'm also going to paint it off of her, because I really don't want her to be too red. But I love what it's done to the rest of the image. It's just really helped and made it pop. So I think that was pretty quick. I think considering that most of these tutorials have been longer, This one went pretty quick. Remember that all of these colors and the leaves and everything is just a matter of personal preference. And obviously, huge important steps in your photography is going to be posing your subjects, and especially with little girls or little boys, just capturing those moments that the parents are going to die for, right? So we're going to just feather that, flatten our image, close our palettes, and that is the end of this tutorial. Please share it. I know that a lot of people are excited by this. It's just simple Photoshop steps, and I learned it all from YouTube, so I thought I'd put it back out there for everybody. So enjoy, and all images that you make, feel free to put them on Chasing Light Facebook page. Thanks. Have a great day.